The views and opinions expressed on Lifeguards Off Duty are those of its hosts and guests exclusively. They do not represent any entity, organization, or municipality.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Michael Katchmar.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Sean.
And this is Lifeguards Off Duty with Dr. Michael Katchmar, the Jersey Shore #1 lifeguard-themed video podcast.
Watch us on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook Live. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever streaming service you prefer.
If you would like to contact us, send an email to drkatchmar@icloud.com. Follow us on Instagram at lg.association.
All right, let's get started.
Let's start the show.
Let's do it.
Michael Katchmar, welcome to Lifeguards Off Duty. So bad water, the first thing is ocean waves. So ocean waves will dictate or is a risk or a hazard for bad water.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the waves, the more energy and the more problems you're going to have, more difficulty, more chance of a drowning, more chance of people getting involved. Now, having said that, I'll go down to 7 here with our board. There's a big difference between northeast swell and hurricane swell. And I'm going to make that point because in New Jersey, it certainly is. We'll have a northeast blow for 2-3 days. They call them nor'easters, nor'easters. And the wind will come out of northeast, blow up, and the waves will get pretty big locally. It's a local storm. Maybe it's, a couple hundred miles out, but it's just local, maybe 100 miles out. And we go in that water all the time. It's 6 to 8 foot, usually, maybe less, maybe 5 to 8, in that frame.
But they're super mild. Inconsistent.
Right. It's inconsistent. It's choppy. It's a lot coming in. And we go swimming that all the time. We go out and those waves are kind of mushy. That's different than a hurricane surf. So a hurricane surf is usually, the hurricanes a lot of times is way out, it could be 1,000 miles away, but you get the swells come in and those waves have a large amount of energy and they're big fat waves. You could have a 2-foot hurricane swell with tons of energy and knocks the shit out of you. And everybody who's listening, as a seasoned lifeguard will know, you go through a 3-foot hurricane swell, and when it breaks on your back, it takes your fins right off. It's heavy, right? So when I'm looking about I'm trying to predict bad water, and we're trying to predict having your assets ready to go for that day, and what kind of day you're going to have. You got big swells, you're going to have big, more problems.
And there's a lot that goes into understanding how all of these factors are going to affect your specific beach.
Right.
Because in Seaside Heights, a west wind or a southeast wind
is different.
Is a lot different than it would be in Sandy Hook.
Right. So but let's just get the general thing here, and then people could adjust this to their specific place.
But yeah, I think the point I'm making is like where you're lifeguarding, you need to take
all
of this into account.
Right, exactly. So the other thing is temperature of the water. And you say, well, how does that make it dangerous? Well, unfortunately in New Jersey where we live, we open up the beach in May and June, and even into July. Our water could be in the high 50s, low 60s. And if anybody's ever gone in water at 57 degrees, that's cold. And you start to get into hypothermia. And hypothermia, you start to get confused, you get muscle fatigue, and you could go down, real quick. So when we see when we have a cold day, there's more chance of people drowning. They don't have a lot of reserve. They go out there. A lot of times they go quick. They go quick because they get hypothermia, they get confused, their muscle cramps, and they just go under. Also, when you go into cold water, what do I always tell you? What happens when you dive into cold water? Go right into cold water. What does it do to your heart? Do you know?
No.
What cold water does is it slows down your heart rate. It doesn't increase it. It slows it down. In the hospital with patients, somebody's got a racing heart. You could put cold water in their face. A lot of times it reduces the heart rate, believe it or not. It's funny. Your heart rate goes down, your breathing gets more. So people dive into the water, right? Their heart rate slows down, believe it or not. And then they start breathing heavily. And if they suck in a little bit water, they choke on it, they gag on it. They might go into what's called their cord closes up. Laryngospasm, and that's it. They're done.
So what exactly is your body trying to do when it slows your heart rate?
Well, it's just a cold. It's trying. That's a whole physical. I could go on for hours with that, but just for say it does it. That's a response to cold water or cold. It's trying to corral heat. It's you don't want to pump as much blood. It's a whole thing.
Trying to keep your core warm.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But anyway, getting back. So these are bad water. How we predict. So you got ocean waves. You got temperature of the water. The other thing is.
I was wondering what that word was.
Oh, temperature. Yeah,
It
my
looks like
writing.
SEM.
Yeah. So the other thing is the tides.
Yeah.
These are so important to know the tides. You like my, did I
Your
spell it right?
T's are very
Yeah,
strange.
I know my T's are right. So tides, you have high tide and low tide, right?
Uh-huh.
So when is the worst time? Is it low or high?
It's in between.
No,
Right?
no. Well, in between.
When they're changing.
Well, that would be from, so listen, generally speaking, low tide is the worst. So if you look at it, it's going from, but not always, but generally speaking, these are all generalities. An hour before dead low and an hour after dead low. For people who are on our podcast and don't understand this, in New Jersey, we have a tidal change every 6 hours. So at 1 o'clock, you'll have dead high. The water will be as high as it's going to get. We have a 6-7 foot tidal change in New Jersey, about 6 foot. So that's 1 o'clock. If you come back at 6-7 o'clock, the water could be down 6-7 foot, and that's dead low. That's what we're talking about. So when an hour before dead low and an hour after dead low, the water is running. Your rip tides are the worst. Okay, they're the worst. Now that's a generality. But if you look over here, down over here on the bottom, but I put big ocean. When you have really big ocean, big surf, 5, 6, 7 foot, high tide could be just as bad as low tide with the runs cooking. So it changes. So it's not an absolute, but
with the big ocean at low tide, that makes the sandbar that much more dangerous.
Right. So what happens is, but when low tide happens, the sandbars basically rise up, and the holes, which we can't demonstrate here, which is going to run harder. The water will run harder through a rip current. See if you can pull up a rip current.
Now, why?
It's philosophy.
I'm asking you this for the sake of our listeners. Why at low tide is that causing the rips to run faster?
Because what happens is the bars are rising. Really what the water is not the bars. It's relative. The water is going down. So the water has no place to escape. The waves are coming in. The water's coming in. You have these sandbars, which are kind of like islands, right? And between the sandbars, you have a rip current. You have a hole, and it goes from the ocean out from the beach to the ocean, right? So what happens is as the water goes lower, the waves come over, and it's trapped. It goes left to right. Can't go over the bar. Where does it corral into? That rip current, that hole that's going east to west, or really, west to east, and it sucks you out. It goes out. So the water comes over the bars, comes in, goes left to right, and then goes out.
So to put that in simpler terms, what you're saying is at high tide, when the water comes over the sandbar, that space is still kind of available for the water to shoot
go right back
out
out.
through.
Right.
So you can the sandbar is still available to help the water get out. But at low tide, when you have maybe a foot of water at most on the sandbar sometimes.
Yeah.
Then it all kind of has to go to that gully to shoot back out.
Right. Now I'll complicate the matters. If you have a strong wind, either north or south, so in other words, blowing right or blowing left, it could actually send the water, instead of going out and the rip currents blowing, going real bad, people will just drift south or north, and then the runs stop working. And you've seen that. So it's a little bit complicated, but that's why I want to talk about wind.
Once you start baking the wind direction into everything, it changes stuff so quickly.
Right.
But before we move on to that, I want to show this great picture we found. This is a classic, perfect example of a.
Oh yeah, there's your
at low tide.
Right, so people can see that right now.
Yeah, we're
so
sharing.
Can you make that bigger? That one? No, okay.
I wish I could.
Okay, so there's the sandbars. The water's coming over, and look at it running out there. That's a great picture. People on our podcast should really look at this.
And now this is a good example. This is a good example as well of what I said before, where you can have an example where a wave will build and then break, And then as it moves over the sandbar, the water gets deeper again. It'll build again and then break again on the shoreline.
Wait, is that you in a lounge chair there with your girlfriend sitting on the beach there over there? I can't see that. Having a Heineken.
No, we haven't been on a tropical vacation yet. This could be Island Beach though.
This is a great picture. I think people should go to this and just explain. This is a great, great picture.
Here's a more of like a chart of what a rip current is. This is more like what you'll see on a ramp walking up to a beach.
Right. That's it. Yeah, that's really good. So now let's cook in. Let's continue on. Let's go and talk about the wind direction. So, whoa, what does that have to do with? Now, remember, when we come in the morning, we've looked at our charts. The weather. We predicted all of this. We look at our time charts, tidal charts, the wind, the weather prediction, the ocean. All of this. And we do this quickly every day, and we make an assumption, or not assumption, we make a decision of what risk. And then we'll talk about the flags and everything. But
first thing I do every day is I look at my partner and I say, what time is the tides?
That's right.
Because that dictates.
Because you don't know what they are.
Yeah. I'm testing them.
You're testing.
That dictates where do I put my stand. That dictates what do I expect at what time of day.
That's right. That's another whole thing. I didn't talk about stands. But so let's talk about the wind direction now. So the wind direction, now this is, again, depends on where you live, what beach you're at. In New Jersey, in Seaside Heights, where we work, Seaside Heights Beach Patrol, our worst wind is a northeast, and especially a light northeast, which means...
I think we just, before you move on, we should describe real quick for people that might not know, our island, our barrier island, our beach faces directly east pretty much.
Yeah. So a wind, when we describe a wind, we describe it, when we say northeast, that means where the wind is coming from. So a northeast wind is coming from the northeast, and where's it going? It's going southwest. Okay. So we don't say southwest. When you describe a wind, it's the direction it's coming from. So are we still, you put us in a small box? Okay.
I'm not sharing right now.
Okay. So the wind, let's talk. So the wind direction in Seaside Heights, the northeast, a light northeast, will make the ocean, the currents run harder. And you might say, why? Well, there's different currents. We have currents also. And it's almost a situation where you got tide against the ocean. It's interesting. If somebody drowns up in north from us, it's sad, but their body will float down. I've seen that many times. But during the day, we get a current going from south to north, especially because at the end of the day, we start getting a northeast blow and the water starts to move. So a lot of times the northeast will make the runs cook harder and make the waves stand up a little bit. So the wind direction is very important. A west wind, for instance, coming from the west, going out, will blow people out. It'll make the runs cook a little bit more, but it's not as bad. A northwest, same thing. You'll get currents. You'll get anything north, west, south. Let me just make a point. Dead south, which causes the beach to get very hot. If you see the forecast for dead south in New Jersey, don't go to the beach. It's hot as all hell. There's flies, even a west wind, but
you'll get that with a west wind too.
Right. Yeah. But in the southeast, also, if it's strong enough, kicks down the runs. So what were we going to say?
Another thing because you said the west wind will pump the rip currents a little bit, but also at low tide, it's going to help that water over the bar as well.
Push it out, right? Yeah. It can. You'll So, and everything we're saying here, you got to take it with these are generalities. It's not written in stone, but this is what you should be thinking about. All of these things when you set up and make decisions on what flag you want to have, what assets you want to have, and what you're going to experience. Because, you could sit low a little bit and relax until an hour before low tide and an hour after high tide. How many times have we seen it? It'll go, the day's going long, we got control, and all of a sudden, bang, everything starts.
You get hit.
You get hit. Rescues, people going in trouble, and it's in the hour before, low tide. And I tell everybody, listen, we got another hour of this, maybe two. Yeah. Sometimes it goes longer, sometimes it goes shorter, and then it's done. It's like nothing ever happened. And then you say, well, what changed? From a layperson laying on the beach, it's like, well, the water looks the same to me.
Yeah.
Well, the tide changed. The wind could have stayed the same. The ocean could have stayed the same. Only thing that changed was the tide.
That tide is,
Tide's a very
just
important
low
thing.
enough to where that water starts pouring into the hole.
It's like porridge. It's just not too hot, not too cold, just right. So wind direction is really important, guys. Now, the time of the day, okay? You say, well, how does that, what do differences make? Well, if low tide, I'm telling you, is dangerous. If low tide is like 9 in the morning, and then, you got it, you see, and then when's the next low tide? Not until 12 hours later, because, 9, 6 hours is high, then you got another. So you might luck out. But if low tide, you're sitting there and we're having a briefing, and I say, listen, low tide is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You better be ready.
3 o'clock in the afternoon in our beach is packed. It's prime time. Between
people are starting to drink.
Between 1 and 3, yeah, we start getting the people who had the cocktails. But 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and if you have bad water, then the beaches have the maximum amount of people. It's the hottest. People are going to go in the water.
Yep.
People have been drinking if they do drink. So the time of the day, if I have everything the same, the wind, the currents, the waves, but it's high tide, low tides in the morning, low tides, way at night, I'm not as worried. I'm a little bit more relaxed, and I'm saying, okay, we're probably not going to have that bad of a day. So again, just to recap here, what's the worst time? An hour before, an hour after, okay? Low tide. Now, what out of those two, what's the worst? So an hour before, an hour after, I think an hour after.
Because you're getting a little more water
coming in.
Yep.
Right. The water's coming in, and I've seen that. Now, this is my 30, 40 years of experience. I've seen this. So I know that's to be the fact. But again, this is more stuff for lifeguards and people who are going to make the decisions on this.
Yeah, we're getting a little technical
right?
I don't want average listener, but
right. So anyway, but that's the end of that. So if I wanted to make it different, just to go over that, you guys could go and look at this later on. My writing's not the greatest, but I think the stuff we have here is really, really important. Before we go on to the next topic, anything there you want to comment on? Because
I just think that
like what
a lot of this stuff
is
stuff that comes with years and years of sitting there and looking at the ocean and thinking about it. So if you are thinking of becoming a lifeguard, or you are a younger lifeguard, these are the things that you need to always take into consideration every single day when you set your stand up.
Right. So let me ask you this, because let's just play like, you're the student and I'm the teacher. So let's talk about now what all of this, how we're going to, I gave you the risks, I took the hazards. So we want to minimize the mishap and then of course the consequence. So we don't want to have a mishap, which is, somebody getting in trouble. So what would you do to minimize that? So what are the things you're going to do? If I say,
do you want to hit me with a scenario?
Well, let's just, I'm gonna hit you with a scenario. So let's just say that low tide is going to be at 3 o'clock. Okay. How is that? How are you going to set your stand up? We open up at 9 o'clock. Where are you going to put your stand? Because we have the ability to put our stands. So low tide is dead lows in the afternoon.
High tide, so
right.
If we're opening at 9, I'm putting my stand on the water line.
Right.
Like
right.
I
where
want the waves going under my stand for the first hour of my day.
Right.
Why is that?
What's going to happen?
Because as the tide goes out, I want to be as close to the water line as possible for 3 o'clock when we have low tide.
Right.
I might even continue moving my stand.
Right.
Forward, maybe because by the end of the day, by the time it would be to move it back, we'd just be racking the stand and dragging it back up the beach anyway.
Right.
So I'm never going to need to continue moving, but that's semantics right there.
Right. Well, as a supervisor, I'll sometimes what we'll do is we'll say, listen, let's put the stands here. And then if it's really a full moon, that's another thing we didn't talk about. But when there's a full moon, you get a higher high and a lower low because of a full moon. That's another aspect, because the moon you asked me what controls tides, and that's moon. But we will move the stands during the day. Don't be lazy. And here's the thing. Let me, again, being, why you have to move the stand? What's the point of it? You're going to run that close. You're that more closer. What moving the stand, it accomplishes two things in my opinion. But what are those two things that it accomplishes?
Well,
if you move the stand forward,
I think the less you need to rely, like the binoculars are an amazing tool, but the less you need to rely on them, the better.
You can see better, closer.
Yeah. And it just makes it easier to get off the stand and have those conversations with people. I'm a big advocate of, one of the first things I always tell rookie or even a 2 or 3 year when I sit with them is like you want to use your whistle as little as possible. You want to get off the stand and talk to these swimmers as often as possible to like build kind of a respect with them where they don't think you're just up there bossing them around.
Right.
Now, so to continue answering your question before, low tides at 3 o'clock at 1:30, I'm either getting off my stand or I'm having my partner get off the stand and walking the water line and talking to people.
Yeah.
And letting them know, hey, in about an hour, hour and a half, this is going to become a lot more dangerous. Here are the spots I want you to swim. We're going to keep everybody right on the sandbar. And I need you to be aware. If I start blowing my whistle, I need you to turn.
Right. So it's preventative, and that's a big thing. Talking about, so my perspective is moving the stand. You could see the people closer. It makes a big difference. Try it. It's amazing. If you sit back on a stand, you put that thing up there near the water. It changes. It's like night and day. The other thing is you have less. You don't have to run as much.
Mm-hmm.
There's less chance of somebody in front of your stand. The other point you make, Tyler, which is really, really good, and I really appreciate it, is the talking to people, because what that does a couple things. A lot of people don't realize there's people on the water who can't see. They wear their glasses. They take them off. They can't see you. They can't hear. They have poor hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and you go, and they could be intoxicated or impaired or autistic or, a million things. You go down, you say, hi, good morning or good afternoon, sir or ma'am. I'm a lifeguard here. I was just wondering, and if they look at you and you're like, whoa, you could make a decision there. If they're intoxicated or if they don't understand. We have people who don't speak English, so we have a barrier. We have to try to speak to them and talk to them and try to make them understand. I think that's a great thing that you're talking about. That saves so much problems, going down and talking to people. And
well, here's the thing, because I
think it's a great idea.
I've been there.
Right.
Where I'm on my stand on, what we call in Seaside Heights an end stand, which is by the pier, and we don't allow people to swim in front of the pier. And we put the red flags up, and I'm blowing my whistle. I'm telling them to get out, and people ignore me. And it took me a very long time, I'd say 3, maybe even 4 summers, to really understand, like, well, these people, they just don't understand the ocean the way we do. They're not seeing it the way we do. They have a different understanding of the job we're doing and the role that they play in it. Because whether we like to admit it or not, or whether a beach patient wants to admit it or not, it is a collaborative effort to keep everyone safe.
Yeah.
So when you go down there and you show them the respect that they deserve as people who are paying customers that are here to have a good day with their family, and you level with them and say, I'm not being a dick here. This is just what I need from you, so everybody stays safe. That makes them threefold more likely to listen to what you have to say and take you seriously, because people don't like being bossed around. Nobody likes being bossed around.
No, but the other thing you have to realize too, and especially the young lifeguards, is there's a lot of people on the beach who have no idea of the ocean, the danger of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand the wind. They to them, it's just like a pool.
Yeah.
They don't have any idea of the significance of how a bad ocean is. To them, one day looks like the other. So you have to go and take that in consideration.
And,
also, I'm sorry.
And to just expand on that, them not having an idea, they a lot of times don't even know when they're in trouble. When it's happening. They could be flapping around in a rip current, and next thing you know, they're 50 yards out. They turn around, they start panicking because they don't even know what's happening.
Right.